When I first read this book, I was going through it. Let's just put it that way, so I would know. Or you think I would know. This is my Roman Empire. I didn't. Sorry. And yes, I judged the book by its cover. It changed my life. I was just like, books can do this? Oh my god. Okay, into this video. I'm really excited for this because since I started making videos regularly, I kept thinking to myself at some point I need to tell everyone what my favorite books are. A little bit about myself, but as a reader. So I thought I would give you guys kind of like a 2-in-1 bookshelf tour / favorite books. And the reason for that is because this one book, it's not going to be a full bookshelf tour because I have a couple of different bookshelves. Anyway, we're here to talk about some of my favorite books, which are all on this bookshelf. This specific shelf is my favorite shelf. It's right next to my desk. And then, I don't know, you can't entirely see it, but I have a plant shelf too. You'll notice that these are almost all novels, and a lot of them are YA fantasy, and then a lot of classics because I do really love classics. Fun fact about me, so growing up, I didn't have as much access to books as I would have liked. I still had access, that's not to say I didn't, but when I would get in trouble, my parents would take my books away or whatever. So I often found myself on iBooks on my iPod, my little iPod that I had, and I would read a lot of classics because they were free. And I didn't have a credit card or anything. So a lot of the classics that I read growing up, Louisa May Alcott, Little Women, I read these when I was 10 years old, 11 years old because they were free on iBooks. Absolutely love them. So I have copies of a lot of these. I'll also give you guys a little bit of context of how I heard about the book or when I read it, if I remember. And then I'll also just tell you a little bit about the book. I don't know how long this video will be. We'll see because I'm in the mood to yap. Let's get into it. So this is my bookshelf tour / favorites. Let me show you what it looks like right now. So up top, I have a few things. That is my tote bag of totes. And then I have my Lego flowers and whatever. This is my first shelf. As you can see, I have a few repeat books. And then, so this is the next shelf. I'll pull the books off of the shelves to show you or explain them. But just for now, I have a duplicate of the Game of Thrones books down here. I was working at a bookstore and they found a full amazing box set, and I bought that before I bought the cute copy. Finally, this is my children's books / stuffed animals that people have gotten me or I've bought myself. And yeah, this bottom shelf is a mixture of stuff, but I have some historical books, mythology, and then just a box of memories and stuff. This is my least developed shelf, but I don't care. Let me put you guys back there. Okay, moving my knickknacks. This is a little jar of rocks and not minerals, rocks and stuff that I've gotten from different places traveling. One day I'll show you guys my collection, but whenever I go somewhere, especially if I go somewhere that's nature-y, if they're selling rocks, you can bet your butts I'm gonna get one. This is from my first time I went to Italy entirely on my own. There's this guy who, he always, every time I've gone back, he's always next to Basilica di San Lorenzo, and I try to go, just even if I don't buy anything from him, I try to go and visit his little stand. But yeah, and then I put this little rose. It's Pinocchio, by the way. 3 copies of Addie LaRue, which I have a confession to make. First book that we'll talk about here is Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This is one of my favorite books of all time, even though I know there are problems with it. Let me explain. When I first read this book, I was going through it. Let's just put it that way. It was in the middle of pandemic, literally. This book came out during the pandemic, but I read this in January 2021. I was visiting family. I read it on my phone at night when I was trying to go to sleep. And it really hit me because it's about, this girl makes a deal to escape her circumstances and also ends up becoming immortal going through the world, but she ends up being invisible to everyone. She's forgotten the moment a door closes between her and other people, so they completely forget that she existed. This book had an impact on me. I think it's because I move so much that whenever I move, I always have this fear in the back of my mind that my friends and people that I know are gonna forget about me. I'm just gonna disappear from their lives. For me, this book was really hard hitting. And then there's also Henry and the whole his Like, if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. This hit me really hard and ended up becoming one of my favorite books, but I'm super aware of like other people's complaints about it, and the more I've like heard other people talking about it and pointing these things out, the more I was like, you're so correct. Like, one of the things that people have said is that it's so Eurocentric. Like, she doesn't go to Egypt to see the pyramids. I'm dying to go there. Like, are you kidding me? She doesn't go to like the Middle East. She doesn't go to Asia. Like, she's literally just in like Italy and France and New York. Girl, you're alive for like hundreds of years and you don't go anywhere? When someone, like, I was watching like reviews on Addie LaRue specifically, just going through different videos and watching because I was curious to know what other people thought about my favorite book. It didn't take away from how much I love it, right? No, different authors will approach their different books in different ways just because, you know, they have like a limited or greater amount of knowledge. Could make the argument that you'd want to do research and have your immortal character go different places. But at the end of the day, I think that books that hit you the way that they hit you, it doesn't matter how valid a lot of the criticism might be. The feelings that I had reading this have not been changed by the criticism that I read, but my view of the book and the author has changed. So would I still recommend this? I think I would, but I would say, like, just know that this isn't the best it could be. And it's a favorite for me for very many different reasons, but I'm 100% aware of the criticisms. And I think it's important to talk about these things. It's really good to acknowledge and even seek out knowing why a book that you love might not be loved by others. Because I think once you understand why other people don't like it, you'll fully understand like the book as a whole and not just as your interpretation of it. I hope that makes sense. This one, my best friend, she went to like a signing for V.E. Schwab and she got me a signed book. She got me a bunch of other things too. I love you, Isra. But yeah, she got me this copy because I was like, this is so pretty, in an airport in England a couple of years ago, I think, or maybe last year. I don't remember. And the next book on this shelf is Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. This is my favorite Austen novel. I read this for a class that I took on Jane Austen. We read all of her books in undergrad, and we read the books themselves, and then we read a lot of like articles and journals and like, you know, literary criticism on the books or literary analysis of the books. And this one really just amazing. You like the Pride and Prejudice movie, the 2005 one, you know what I'm talking about? Watch the Sense and Sensibility movie because that one eats it up, and there are clear imitations between the two films. The 2005 movie took a lot of inspiration from the 1995 Sense and Sensibility movie. Highly recommend this. I love this. This is my favorite Austen novel. Then the next one is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. So fun fact about, oh my god, we kind of match. I read this for the first time when I was living in England with my mom. I devoured this book in like a day. I don't know why I ended up picking it up or what happened that I ended up picking it up, but I read it so fast. I don't know. I love this book because the characters all suck. The love story is so entangled. It's all a mess, and I love the drama. That's what I'll say, is I love the drama, and the writing is just gorgeous. Like, he's more myself than I am. Pause. We need a moment for that. I love this book so much. Highly recommend this classic if you haven't read it. Beautiful for like late fall, early winter, in my opinion. So if you haven't read this yet, highly recommend. Highly recommend. But that's Wuthering Heights. I have like several copies, and I'm not going to show you all the copies, but I do have several copies of this book because it's one of my favorites of all time. The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I mentioned this in another video very briefly, but I read this book for an independent studies class that I was taking with one of my favorite instructors when I was in college. I just loved the conversations on existentialism, fate, God, morality, immorality, blah, blah, blah. There's so much going on in this book. Very long. You could just listen to it as an audiobook too. It's beautifully done. Next one I have is Letters to a Young Poet. It's very tiny. Then we have, sorry, that covered my face. But then we have The Secret History. I bought this copy online through AB eBooks. This is the blueprint for dark academia. So if you haven't read this and you like dark academia, I do highly recommend it. There's also an audiobook, because I read like, I think like 2/3 of it, and then the last few chapters I just like found the audiobook. Donna Tartt reads it herself. It's so well read. Like these two little guys, well, two little people, and I got this in Iran from like a handmade goods store. Picture of Dorian Gray, which this is one of my favorite classics of all time. Well written, eloquent. There's so much, like, it's a short book, but there's so much in this of like beauty, mortality, immortality, morality, the pursuit of youth, and just so good, guys. I'm not gonna go into the books too much because like I have a lot to get through. I found this copy on thrift books, and I was like, this is the best cover I have ever seen. No like rhyme or reason, it's just kind of like there. I think when I was setting this up, one of my thoughts was just hardcovers on one side mostly and paperbacks on the other, so that might be part of it, but you can hear the train. I'm living in Stardew Valley, guys. Guys, if I'm gonna bring any new perspective to YouTube and the booktube community, it's going to be this. I know we all love Little Women. I do too. I know we all love, well, I think the Little Women's the only Alcott that is like famous. But if you liked Little Women, read Moods. Even if you didn't like Little Women, read Moods. I'm telling you, this is my favorite Alcott. And I've read Moods. Well, again, this was one of the books that I literally found via iBooks on my iPod. Little Women, Moods, and Old Fashioned Girl are all three books that I read of Louisa May Alcott on iBooks on my iPod when I was 12. Moods is my favorite one. Please, if you haven't read Moods by Louisa May Alcott, please read it. I am telling you, I'm not gonna tell you what it's about, but one day I will sit down and I'll make a video. I have to reread it because there are things like I know about it, but they're the most spoilery things and I don't want to talk about that. But I will sit down and reread this at some point. I'm gonna do a reading vlog for Moods, and then you can watch it and read it along with me. I love this book so much. Sylvia is my little baby girl. Also, I forgot to mention, my best friend Summer bought me this copy for my birthday a couple years ago, and she look at this. Read Moods. I am begging you, read Moods. Read it. That is all. And it's really hard to find. That's one thing I'll say is check if you can find it on iBooks. It should still be there, but this book is actually so hard to find. And Summer found this for me after I was like searching for it. Copy, I got it when I was, again, working at the used bookstore, and I thought it was just such a beautiful copy. I have read this, not his best work, Ernest Hemingway's best work, but this copy is just amazing. Like the Louisa May Alcott girly that I am, I have an Old Fashioned Girl. I found this when I went to Florida a couple years ago, and I found it in, again, a used bookstore, and it's just like my favorite thing ever that I've ever found, just organically out in the world. I also really love this book. I love all of her work that I've read so far, but again, like I said, Moods, kind of like my YA fantasy shelf. And then there's also the message here just for no reason, because that's not YA or fantasy. Actually moved this. I talked about this before. This is a work of nonfiction. It actually just came out this year, and it was really moving for me as a writer, as a reader, as a person in the world. Just very good. I'm holding it upside down. That's embarrassing. Very quick fire. We have Babel. It was actually a copy that a friend of mine gave me for my birthday a couple years ago, and then I finally read it last year. Atlas 6. I will say this is very much like a character-driven novel. If you want plot, you're not going to find it here. I liked the first book a lot, actually, but I didn't like the second, so I ended up DNFing the series. I did finish the second book, but I didn't. Sorry. Caraval up here. I love the series. I'm kind of waiting to like over time complete my collection of it. I'm getting a little bit chilly, guys, so I'm gonna go get like a little jacket. 1 second. Okay, there we go. I'm very aware this fit is kind of giving Christmas, but I have no complaints about that. Cruel Prince series. Love this series. It's my favorite, one of my favorites of all time. I'm gonna be reading Stolen Air with my friend this week. We're gonna start reading it, so I'm really excited about that too. Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Of course, of course, it changed my life. It changed my life. I was just like, books can do this? Oh my god. A book that I have to take off the shelf and show you guys. Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I picked this book up without knowing a single thing about what it was about. It went to this like local bookstore and they have, I love it when they have this by the way, but they had this like favorites of all the people who work there shelf. And this was on there and I looked at it and I was like, this is a very interesting cover. And yes, I judged the book by its cover. I read this so fast. This is actually the reason why I joined Bookstagram, because I was like, I need to talk about this. Love this book so much. One of my top favorites of all time. And I highly recommend going into it without spoilers. Like, don't look for any information on what it's about. Just go in blind. I'm telling you, go in blind with this book. Then we have The Hunger Games. Oh my god. Oh god. We're having a revolution of books. I do need to get like a better editions of these books because they are my favorite of all time. Literally books that made me because I started reading these books when the movies started coming out. So I was late to the game a little bit, but when the Hunger Games movie was coming out, like I saw the trailer and I was like, what is this? And then I read the books, and I was like, I'm obsessed with this. I'm obsessed with Jennifer Lawrence. I was obsessed. The book series also came to me in a time of my life where I was feeling really powerless and feeling really struggling in my circumstances that I didn't have any control over, and it made me feel so deeply. Like, this book series, I could cry if I talk about this long enough, but this book series is honestly one of my genuinely one of the books that made me not just the reader that I am, but the person that I am. I truly believe this with my whole entire chest. I'm gonna start crying. When Songbirds and the Ballad of Songbirds came out, I was so excited, especially when the movie was coming out, because I was like, wait, we get to go back. Last Thanksgiving, I read this book. My friends were going to Toronto and I was supposed to go with them, but I didn't get to because my car started having problems and I felt a little bit unsafe traveling during the winter snowy months with a not stable car. And we arranged it so that we would watch it at the same time, and as soon as I got out of the theater I called them, and it just made my Thanksgiving. Alone for the Thanksgiving holidays, and it doesn't bother me too much being alone. It's so Guys, do you hear that? Do you guys hear the birds? Oh my god. Sorry, that was so beautiful. I don't know if my camera caught that, but you can hear them in the background. I know for sure that you can hear them in the background, but oh my god. Sorry. That made me so happy. Okay, anyways. That is so freaking insane because songbirds. Guys, what the heck? Okay, anyway. I called them when I got out of the theater and we were just gushing on the phone, and it was just it's one of the warm moments of my life. Genuinely just a moment that I look on fondly, and I'm just that was so, those moments with your friends or family that as it's happening and afterwards that this is a warm spot in your life of just, I don't know. But yeah, so this is also very special to me. These books came to me at a really special time, and so did this one, in the sense of when I read it / when the movie came out. So yeah, I love The Hunger Games. I know another one is coming out next year and I'm really excited for it. I'm so excited for it because we're getting Haymitch's story. Okay, anyways, I need to move on. I've been talking about these for too long. I have Game of Thrones, which I'm not going to show you the box set again. You probably already saw it and I don't want to pull the whole thing out. So let me grab my duplicate copies. I read these a few years ago when I was I watched the show and then everybody was talking about how the books are even better, and they were right. I read all the books in 2018, 2019. I think no, actually 2017, 2018, I read all the books. These books are what made me want to write fantasy, and I wrote an entire manuscript, which I've never published and I don't think I ever will, but I wrote an entire manuscript completely inspired by, it's not fan fiction, but it was inspired by having houses and having wars and this and that and eating, which I need to find a better place for this right now. I just kind of stuck it in there. Literary fiction, but add vampires. very good. I read that earlier this year and I just was like, wow, the writing is beautiful. It's silky. Here, Vicious by V.E. Schwab. My best friend Isra, again, Isra mentioned, but she bought me this for one of my birthdays a few years ago. Loved this book, and the second one I really liked too, but I loved the first one so much. I really loved the movie and I really liked the book. So there's that one. Yes, I know there are issues with it. I still really like it. The Four Agreements and The Voice of Knowledge. I really love both of these books now, which I read a few years ago, really loved, bought my mom a copy. And then ironically, my brother recently was like, you should read The Power Now. And I was like, babes, I introduced it to the family. I have On Writing by Stephen King, which I read a few years ago and I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was kind of useful. It's not the best writing advice book by any means, but I really enjoyed it when I read it at the time, so I wanted a copy. Wolf, I read this a really long time ago. I don't know why I got a copy. I think it's because I wanted to reread it. I don't remember entirely like why I enjoyed it so much. I remember what it was. It's like a historical fiction, World War II, but Hitler won, and then this girl is getting into a race because she wants to kill him. It struck me in the way that it had been written. I don't read a lot of historical fiction books, so it might not be as good compared to other historical fiction books, but from the things that I had read at the time, I really enjoyed this. So then we have Call Me By Your Name. I love this book. I love this movie. We have Atonement by Ian McEwan. I read this a few years ago. Love the book, love the movie. And we have Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is my favorite Emily Henry book that she's written, but I love so much of what she's written. Like, Emily Henry got me back into reading romance because I used to kind of hate it for a really long time. Not hate it, but I just didn't really like it because I felt like it was just kind of unrealistic. A lot of the romances I read growing up, which I can't give you titles at this point, but a lot of the romances that I read growing up that were like contemporary romances, not the same as like classic romances, they felt like they were lacking depth and substance to me. And so when I started reading like Emily Henry's books, I was like, wait, there it is again. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. And then I have Map of the Otherlands. Between these two books, I love the second one more, but I love both of them. I love them so much. They're in alignment with like Cruel Prince, although I don't want to compare, but I think I would like the Cruel Prince more. But yeah, really love this. Love the way that fairies are portrayed. Love the main characters. I love Emily. She's my bestie for the restie for real. Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed. I'm so glad I picked this up because I read Wolf and the Woodsman via audiobook, and I think that's why I didn't like it as much, to be honest. But I didn't really like it, and I was like, okay, whatever. Then I started hearing about this, and I was like, you know what? Let me try it again. I'm so glad I read this book. It's amazing. It's incredible. Now we're in the last shelf of my bookshelf. There's another shelf, but that one does not count. Let me just put it that way. In terms of readiness to be viewed. I'll show you some of the books that are there because they are books that I've read that I really enjoyed. But so I'm not going to move any of these, set them up in like a very specific way. I don't want to move them around, but very briefly I'll just kind of like read out to you what they are. Let me actually just show you. So this is my little shelf. Most of these my friends got me. These are all bookmarks that I've gotten from like different places. If you can't tell, sloths are my favorite animal, so I have a lot of them. My friend bought me this from Italy when she went and did a study abroad there. That's a copy of Alice in Wonderland that I got from a used bookstore that was just gorgeous. Pan's Labyrinth is one of my favorite movies of all time, so I bought the book like immediately when it came out, and then I have like a couple of copies of Alice in Wonderland. Here we have the Pocket, Emily Dickinson, which actually is not children's books, but I just put it there because it's a very tiny book. And then The Prophet, Failing at Life, my friend bought me. This one my friend bought me. And actually what's so funny about this one is two of my friends bought me the same exact book. So I have two copies of it. One of them is in my box of memories. Just because I was like, I'm not going to display two books, but I'm also not going to get rid of them. They're both gifts. Green Gables, which I also read growing up, love, love, love. Pinocchio, Little Prince, James and the Giant Peach, and then The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And then down here we have Air, which my friend bought me, which I actually need to add this to my unread bookshelves. Just like a coloring book, which I've kind of worked on. I'm going to take it with me when I go back to England for Christmas. Ariadne, which I really loved. Circe, Song of Achilles. Between Circe and Song of Achilles, I love Song of Achilles more. And Romance of Tristan, I also bought this. This is a beautiful, beautiful copy. Let me show you. Look how gorgeous that is. It's a classic. I need to move these. Look how, like, that's what I'm saying, is like these shelves are not, this bottom shelf is just kind of thrown together. Put out some of the extra stuff that was just like there. I have Little Women, which I need to move this up on my shelves. I don't know why it's down here. I think I just bought it later and I never found a place for it. So let me just, I'm gonna like leave that out so I can put it away. The Odyssey, which kind of goes along with like the whole Greek mythology thing going on here. And then Euripides. We have Galatea, which is one of my favorite short stories that I've ever read. This is like a very pretty book. Oh my god, gorgeous. Just beautiful. Now, which I actually have not read this one, but this is just beautiful. I got this from Barnes & Noble. They had them on sale a while back. I have The House of Medici. As you can tell, after I went to Italy for the first time, I was like, I need to know more. And so I read up on the Medicis and the Renaissance, which I thought was just so fascinating. The Borgias, there was like a pope that was from this family. Have not read this one. This is what kind of inspired Game of Thrones, so I really wanted to read that. And then we have just an Italian dictionary, because I've been learning Italian. I don't know it very well, but I've been learning it. More like history type stuff. I've read this one and I think this is so well done. Like, it's just such a good, concise book on a bunch of different myths, Greek and Roman myths. So highly recommend if you're curious. It's a really fun read and I like the way that it's written. And then I have just like a bunch of things that I've hidden back here. This was so fun to do because I love talking about the books that I love, obviously. So there you have it. That is my bookshelf tour, my one bookshelf tour / favorite books that I've ever read. Obviously this is like a long list of favorite books. If I had to condense it, that would take forever, and for me to like actually decide which ones would stay and which ones would go. But these are a bunch of my favorite books that have made it on the shelf that's like central to my house. Like, I walk in the door and the first thing I see is these guys. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you like them, you didn't like them. I would love to know if you loved it, hated any of these. Let me know what your favorite books are. Give me your top 5 if you can. If not, then give me your top 10. I don't know. Just give me a couple books that are not on here that are your favorites that you think I should read, because I'm always looking for new favorites. And if I have to expand my shelf to a second favorite bookshelf, I will do it. Thank you for watching. It's been lovely making these and lovely seeing that people are watching them, because it's kind of cool. Thank you for being here as always, and I will see you in the next video very soon, hopefully. Goodbye for now.